Well, hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Storytelling Alchemist show. Very excited about having our authors on today about their book. Like always, this show will be on the Los Angeles Tribune's Roku TV network about a few days after our broadcast. And so let me go ahead and introduce my guests. I have Dr. Amit Goswami, who was on my old show, Soul Talk, a few times, and Dr. Valentina Onisor on as well. We're going to be talking about their book, The Quantum Brain. And so this is a book, and I'll pull it up a little bit later because you're definitely going to want to order this book and read it. So Dr. Onisor and Dr. Goswami, thank you for coming on the show. How are you doing today?
Good. I'm very welcome. Glad to be on this show.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good. We'll have a great time. And I was just kind of wanted to jump into some, I guess, basic questions. Like you guys talk about consciousness in the book, and can we talk about what consciousness is, and does the brain produce consciousness, or is it something that does consciousness create the brain? Like how does all that work, and what does that mean?
Yeah, this is one of the fundamental questions, because, how does a material brain invoke consciousness, which has to be non-material? The reason that consciousness has to be non-material is that matter can only make objects. It cannot make subject of an experience, the I. So people, of course, vainly try to make models to show that the I is a fake. It does not really exist. That's the materialist neuroscience. But, any intelligent person can see that these arguments are very vacuous. Of course, how to do it is another story. I had to, I was looking, just as many other people were looking in the 1980s, for the right model for consciousness. But how do you introduce the I in a science of objects? So we're all stuck. And then this unexpectedly, quantum physics gives us puzzles. And those puzzles were big hints that consciousness must enter. From the beginning, Niels Bohr already suspected that yes, there must be some sort of subject-object mixed up in the manifestation of quantum objects into actuality, because the truth is quantum physics is a physics of possibility. The picture that it gives for objects is no longer objects per se, they are possibilities. And then how the possibilities become actuality, that is called the quantum measurement problem. Because when we measure, when an observer looks, then we don't see possibility, we can't. Possibilities cannot exist in space or time. We always see actuality. And we always see undoubtedly with our brain. That is unquestionable. I mean, human beings, we feel that we have an eye in the brain. We don't experience it any other way. So the riddle really is that, okay, consciousness is to change the possibility into actuality by choosing. Possibility means various choices. Consciousness chooses a particular one, and that's the actuality that we experience in a given experience. And this power, choice of consciousness, is how consciousness enters physics. How can consciousness choose from possibilities if the possibilities are consciousness's own possibility? So this part so far is very, very clear. And the only thing that I discovered where people are stuck is that is consciousness individual, brain, or is consciousness non-brain, non-material, and global, universal. And the discovery was that it is global, universal, and of course that is what spiritual traditions are saying since 7,000 years. And that integrates science and spirituality, but it also puts many scientists in helter-skelter. They don't like spirituality to mix into the affairs of science. So at once it's a very popular idea, and indeed it has been quite a revolution in popular thinking. but the scientists are still resisting. The reason is that the question of how consciousness, this non-material ground of being in which matter exists as possibility, including the brain, how that becomes actualized. This is the fundamental problem. And if it is actualized, how can we tell that this theory has differences that we can actually measure or experience? Those are the scientific questions. So, my big discovery was that there is a tangled hierarchy. This is the concept which is the first difficult concept that the any person studying the brain has to understand. The brain have two apparatuses, memory and perception. And you think about it, there is a circularity between these two apparatuses. Without perception, there is no memory. But unless we memorize, we cannot perceive. Unless a memory is made, there is no permanent impression that we can perceive. So they're dependent on each other. And so this idea that two systems depend on each other and mutually create what is happening, this is a tangled hierarchical relationship. Instead of the current picture of elementary particles making atoms, making molecules, that's a simple hierarchical model. Elementary particles have all the causal efficacy, the upper levels don't have it. But here, the memory and perception apparatus of the brain both are crucial in creating the perception, which consists of I see an object, namely you. And this was the big breakthrough of how the brain gets a self. And of course, from there, the next question is, how does the ego consciousness arise? Because this is still a very cosmic experience, this tangled hierarchical quantum self, as we call it. So that led to new ideas, such as there is a P-conscious domain, and that has been verified in the neuroscience literature. And then do we really have a quantum self, which is universal, which we all share? Yes, that too has been verified experimentally. The idea is called non-locality. We all share a non-local consciousness. How do you prove it? We prove it by realizing that simply by intending that you and I will have non-local correlation, will be one together, we will experience each other's, even each other's brain potential. We experience each other's mental thought that has been quite well known in experiences such as telepathy and measurements too. But this brain potential, I am seeing a series of light flashes, you are not seeing it. But if we intend that we will be one and we will communicate directly, then the brain picks up. My light flash producing a brain potential in my brain appears as a brain potential also in your brain, measured by individual electroencephalogram machines. So this kind of experiment, which is called transfer potential, has now convinced most open-minded scientists that there is some basis to this quantum brain. Brain has to be quantum, a tangled hierarchical brain with possibility of quantum non-locality. This is a quantum property. Without this quantum property, quantum attribute, we would not be what we are. We are not just the ego, which is a simple hierarchical existence. We had hunch of our programs like a computer CPU, but then we also have this quantum self. So the whole challenge of quantum brain is that to get to the quantum. As we more and more give up the Newtonian brain connected with the ego and enter the pre-conscious, which leads to the quantum brain, we realize very different physiology of the brain. We realize tremendous amount of potentialities that could not be experienced before. So this book, hopefully, it will revolutionize the way the reader thinks his or her brain works and can really optimize the brain function, and this way optimize his or her own potentialities.
Awesome. So in essence, I have a couple of questions. Well, that just sets off a lot of questions in my mind. One is, you mentioned that we all share, I guess, the quantum space, or that quantum mind, or that, I guess some people will call it the macro brain or the macro consciousness. And then, but that kind of brings me back down into the physical body. And I've always thought of the physical body is like a projector of your experience. So you're experiencing emotions, you're experiencing things within your body based on perception and based on memories. And as a result, that is what is creating or is experiencing in your mind. So I know the book talks about rewiring, optimizing your brain. Does that start physically? Because don't we fire neurotransmitters in our brain to, as we form new habits and form new ways of thinking? And maybe this is a question for you, both of you, Dr. Onisor as well, because I know you probably understand the physicality of the body and the brain, will both too, but how does that work as you're rewiring your brain? Are you firing new transmitters and within the brain?
This idea of rewiring has, of course, become very popular, but one has to be very careful about what one is talking about. Okay. When a materialist scientist who believe that brain is material and we are a computer, we are a machine-like thing, their belief indeed is something like what you said, that, but not really as a projector. They feel that there is no such thing as a computer, but indeed, brain computer is such a complex machine that it gives the appearance of as if there is a reference point that we can call I. But it's an appearance, it's an operational convenience. That's the way they look at it. And therefore, in that description, however you change the brain, rewire the brain virtually remains the same. It's just changing the programs a little bit. For example, there was already a lot of research about London taxi drivers, if their brain, because the evidence is there already that the brain becomes heavier. And so must be a lot of rewiring going on, new connections, synaptic connections. So they're now again doing another experiment with a broader sample to prove that. But to us, that's not the creative quantum brain we are talking about. So we can, of course, rewire the brain by having more and more of the same kind of experience that we usually have. Like taxi drivers in London, they can memorize even more of the addresses they have to find, streets that they have to find, and then their hippocampus indeed will gain weight. And so that can, I'm sure, will be shown by the new experiments. But that is not creative. It's the same old. What we are talking about, we can also rewire the brain by delving into creative experiences. And it is these creative experiences that excites medical doctors like Valentina, because this creative experience can be used to heal. Creative experiences can be used to remove trauma. Creative experience can be used to transform ourselves into loving beings, into justice, all kinds of archetypal embodiment, which we hadn't before.
Right. Can I add something?
Yes, absolutely.
That you have a starting point, because we have to acknowledge that we live in this era of rational mind today, right? It's so much information processing dominating the culture, right? Both men and women, we are dominating of this thinking life, yeah? Men more than women, but more and more women also. So in order to start from somewhere, we have to see what's happening with all this wonderful potential that we have, right? And again, the first things to start dealing with the most important things that the brain develops in processing of the mind, even if you think of traditional child development today, is first of all this hyperactivity or lack of concentration, right? And how will we do it? We have to improve it by practicing what is called concentration meditation. And I will want to talk about this a little bit later, and about the preconscious, which you just mentioned, yeah? And then the second problem would be the intellectualism, which is producing that contracted consciousness. And this we handle via awareness meditation. And when we have gained some control over our mind, our this inferior mind, first of all, then we need to pay attention to the vital body, yeah? And here, of course, especially if you're a male, right? You don't have so much awareness at all of vital energy movement in your body, right? All this awareness of vital energy comes from instinctual emotions, which are mixed with thought, negative that evoked in the midbrain in response to external stimuli. So again, you have to also acknowledge, in the book you will find the explanation, which for me also was very important, about what's happening with these negative emotional brain circuits, and that actually they are 5 times stronger because they are kind of embedded in our structure, and why we are so much more receptive and sensitive to these ones instead of the positive ones. But actually creating the positive ones, it's our homework, it's our responsibility to create them, all this compassion, forgiveness, love, and so on, so it's our duty, and it's part of the process of growth. And the brain, yes, can change. There is this phenomenon of neuroplasticity, right? It's not just Einstein who can do that. Yeah, and it's like making these new synaptic connections between neurons, indeed, and even these brain circuits of positive emotions, right? And then from the medical perspective, first of all, with the preconscious thing, I wanted to really tell you when you talked about that, because maybe not many people know about this preconscious. And Freud introduced not only the concept of the unconscious, probably you heard about Freud, most of the others, yeah, but also another very enigmatic concept, enigmatic for the materialist people, which is called preconscious. So at the first sight, this may even seem to be enigmatic from a quantum science point of view, because unconscious is potentially unmanifest, yeah? Conscious is manifest. And the result of actualization of potentiality, that's easy to conceive, right? But what Freud is saying is that in between these two states, we have this twilight zone, which is called the preconscious, okay? And neuroscience then explains, because I mentioned meditation and concentration meditation, awareness meditation, you will also find explanations in this book. And the neuroscience explains what happens in meditation. And also, like, I am very happy with what happens in meditation from the medical perspective, really, especially when we speak about quantum healing and all the stages in the fundamental creativity, fundamental transformation. What you get through meditation is much more than what you can get through years of any kind of therapy, whether speaking about pills, whether speaking about all kind of therapies, not even the most special Ayurvedic things, which I know, all these deep therapies, which are so extraordinary, not even those cannot do what you can do yourself when you learn how to meditate. Okay, and I mentioned concentration meditation, which is concentrating your attention on an object, can be external or internal, which is helping you to take you and your brain away from me-centeredness. I didn't explain yet what is that with the negative emotional brain circuits and what is the base level of our thinking existence, right? And me-centeredness, right? This ego condition is there, yeah? And it doesn't mean that the ego is bad, it's not that, yeah? But we have to learn how to deal with that and how to have a healthy personality also. And another way of meditating is you find names like mindfulness or awareness meditation, witnessing meditation, or meditation on the subject, yeah? And you become mindful of what is happening right now. So just pay your attention to awareness of whatever object arises in awareness without judging. And gradually you settle down as a witness of both subject and object of awareness that's taking place. So this meditation is also about present centeredness, okay? And so the message of quantum worldview, it's a lot about that, and neuroscience data is clear. And the meditation is good practice, but it's still just the preparation for transformation, which is the real transformation, real change, if you want, which requires a sustained application of creativity. It's a stage-by-stage process, which involves two levels, conscious and unconscious processing, yeah? And this continuous big quantum leaps. We didn't speak about the principles, in the transformative principles in quantum science yet. So that has to be followed by a manifestation stage when, again, you know about what it means to have an insight, and then you need to take it through towards manifestation. If it stays just an insight, it's for nothing. So in this manifestation stage, there's this intense interaction between the ego and the quantum self. And this is called by psychologists flow. And people call it, this experience as a flow, you know, and also in healing, you will find this term. So you can think of this flow consisting of little quantum leaps of inspiration in otherwise continuous ego operation that we call, yeah, you know, like perspiration. So in this way, you can think of creativity culminating in this big bang, followed by many little bangs, so to speak. Yeah. So in view of this brain data on the preconscious, which are many, you can also think of this flow as the experience of the preconscious. All right. So this quantum leaps of insight, followed by transformative manifestation, they do produce increasing levels of happiness and intelligence, and with that also that state of expansion of consciousness. Right. So all this is scientific and quantifiable.
So I was just pondering and thinking about, you mentioned that meditation, and I know this, I've been meditating for now, I guess 24 years. So it's, I know the effects of what it does, maybe not the scientific reasons behind it. I just know that it works. And so, and all the different therapies I've seen my friends do for all the traumas that they have. And I know you guys talk about that kind of stuff in the book as well. It hasn't worked as well. So, one of the things I've always considered is that, you know, you were having these shifts, I just call it shifts in consciousness, like my way of thinking of whatever I had happened to me 10 years ago or 15 years ago or 20 years ago, my whole perspective changes and the way I view the world changes. It's not so limited as to think that that one thing that happened to me was detrimental. And then I don't feel alone in the world because I feel like I'm connected to something that's bigger than me. Now, my spiritual side says that that's God or consciousness or universe. I call it universe. But I mean, does it really even matter what we call it in the sense, you know? I just know it feels good and it makes me happy and I smile a lot.
Exactly.
So what is it, that connection to that larger consciousness that kind of starts collapsing all of these?
Yeah, it is that connection. The connection, getting back that connection is the crucial objective. Valentina covered a lot of ground. She mentioned quantum leaps. That quantum leap is the crucial thing about connection. Why most people shy away from connection? Because they don't have the tenacity to get through the process of this alternative doing and being. I call it do process. That's what we call it. And that is the hard part of creativity. It's not just simply doing, thinking, and new ideas come and I rewire the brain and I am changed. Those kinds of changes are just conditioned changes that can be predicted and they don't mean very much. Okay, that not to be disregarded. Worldly success does depend on those kinds of changes. But the real changes, how you become a loving person, how you become a spiritual person, how you become a creative person, those all require this quantum leaps and the do process before it. And then also, again, that little bangs that Valentina mentioned, the flow experience, the manifestation. So this makes it a little bit harder than it seems like. It is not just reading a book and you get it, or sitting meditate one time and you get something, or you go to a workshop, get excited, oh, I can do so many things. Yeah, you have the potentiality to do so many things, but if you want to do it, it will be a little hard work, just as the spiritual traditions have been telling us. We have been refusing to do it, thinking that, okay, science has given us so many pills, maybe there will be a creativity pill. but there is no creativity. As one scientist used to say, there is no free lunch. There is no free lunch to creativity.
So I think I just met a woman about 2 weeks ago, and of course we've all heard of these stories many, many, many times where people have had miraculous healings. And I just interviewed a guy named RJ Spina who had started walking. You know, he was paraplegic and he started walking. The doctors said he'll never walk again, and he walked within 100 days. I just met a woman that had major, I can't even remember, I think fibromyalgia and pain in her body for many, many years, and she went to a Joe Dispenza workshop, and he led her through a meditation, and her pain just went away almost just like that, and it's never come back. Are those just kind of you're lining up into those quantum leaps and literally your perception of what pain and the body kind of moves into a healing mode? How does that work so instantaneously?
Well, our understanding is very, very clear. If you look at a person's life, there are many things that a person does quite unconsciously, and they add up and can produce a quantum leap. Quantum leap, this is the thing about quantum leap, which is wonderful. Just because I said that you may have to be resilient, you may have to persevere, does not mean that actually you really have to persevere. I was a novice and only been thinking about these things for a couple of years, and I meditated for 7 days and experienced of what people call samadhi. So it can happen with very little effort too. There is a thing called divine grace in the spiritual literature, and that divine grace translates as something that there is always a causal aspect. Carl Jung called it synchronicity. An aspect of experience that happens via some kind of coincidence of things. Something happens outside and coincidentally I make a big change, quantum leap inside. So it's not surprising that somebody goes to a workshop and the workshop leader said something inspirational, and in that moment of inspiration, quantum healing that Valentina was talking about happens. One should not be surprised to it. Divine grace descended, but usually people have to go through a very conscious creative process, and then we are sure that quantum healing will take place. Whereas in this way, it may not. Mostly it does not.
Yeah.
That's the hint that we are given.
Okay, let me add something, just 2 words about that. So, because quantum healing is one of my favorite subjects, we wrote already in a future book, Quantum Integrative Medicine. You'll find that next year. And also we had workshops about this, and we are teaching to our students. The subject is wonderful. And indeed, usually like people need conscious preparation, but speaking of reincarnation also, which we have to take into account, and so many things which we may not even know how that person is preparing for something. So of course it is a level of divine grace when something like that is happening, right? Or it is a leap towards the supramental level, which you can also do it. So either it's the part of the divine grace and just surrender to God and you do it, and then you don't know if it's happening or not, but you just, that's what you can do for now. But if you want consciously, you can also engage in this creative process, which is, it's really doing conscious all this work towards the divine grace. Again, because there's the divine grace only, which is doing all these real quantum leaps. But then again, there is really not a quick fix. Many people are so lazy and they are looking for these quick fixes, without taking into account what they did to produce that kind of disease, first of all, So they don't really want to change. They come to you, but they don't want to change anything about themselves, and that's a problem. Because again, when these kind of leaps happen, usually it also happens with a very deep understanding there and a kind of state of enlightenment there in some levels. And then when you come back, you have to go through the manifestation stage in the responsible manner. And that means that all your life will change, it should be like that. And if not, eventually you will get into the same disease later on or to another problem which can be there. So whenever that happens, it's something to be very happy about and grateful. And moreover, to just, because of that, to transform your life completely.
This lifestyle change, even the medical profession is gradually accepting that lifestyle change is very important. They, of course, heal by very difficult operations sometimes, cancer with surgery or chemotherapy, or heart disease with open heart surgery. And those things are definitely curing the immediate problem. But if the lifestyle does not change, these problems will come back for sure. So what does that mean, changing lifestyle? Lifestyle means that you have software that is giving you these problems, this disorder. So those software has to be changed. The same thing I was talking about the brain, now it's about the organs. How do you change the organ software? It's again the same process. Do, quantum healing, then manifestation. So you really have to take this lifestyle changes very seriously. Whether you do it following an allopathic procedure or following quantum healing, the lifestyle change is a must, because that's where we practice these flow experiences and change the way we operate in our life. The more we bring in love and wholeness in our life, the more well-being we feel.
Yeah, that's powerful, because you mentioned the organs in the body. One of the things I do every day in my meditation is I give thanks to every organ in the body. I get the lungs for bringing me air and pumping air into my body, and the heart for pumping blood into my body. And I don't know what made me do that one day. I just started thinking, well, we're not grateful for a lot of things in life. We spend a lot of time complaining. So why wouldn't I just say to my body, thank you for carrying around this vessel?
You know what? You should do it for all the 5 bodies, actually.
It's not a bad idea. I will do that.
Yeah, because we have them, and actually the physical disease, and not just that, but still even the physical disease can be caused at all the levels that we live, at each of our 5 bodies. There's not enough proof about that, and if people are strictly materialistic, they assume that all disease is caused at the physical level, and this is the most profound mistake at the conventional medicine, yeah? But the alternative healing professions make also the same mistake if they attribute disease to any one level as due to malfunction at any one body. So in many cases, you have to examine the cause of disease at more than one level. So it's a lot to talk about that.
It's interesting, because I used to do this thing called RFI, or resident field imaging, where I could measure. I had a device where I could measure the frequency of the aura, just 2 layers of it, and I could see like energy of like pain or anxiety coming into the body, and then I would do a Reiki treatment on this person, and then you would clear it, and then we'd send them out to go to lunch, and then come back, and we'd see it start coming back in that second layer again, because they went out and started experimenting, started cussing at people and getting mad at the restaurant worker or whatever that was happening, or they started worrying, and you'd see it coming right back in, and I'm like,
Yeah,
so
definitely. We speak about the vital level in that cleaning, vital level. And there are these vital components and obvious physical ones, afterwards, because they are very, very close to each other on these 2 levels. And if you treat only the vital components, as you say about the aura, as is done by any kind of Eastern practitioners, even Chinese medicine, or even homeopaths, they are trying to do. So it's true that the treatment at the vital level is more fundamental and encompasses the physical level, but it also takes time, and it may not be enough only, So of course it's each individual, that's the thing. We treat every person. We don't treat a disease, we treat every person to see how it's all the congruence between all the systems that a person is.
Our big discovery is that when we take a quantum leap and make new software by manifestation, this new software actually changes the physiology that existed before. And therefore, the exciting news is that, for example, when the heart learns to love or awakens into love, then the physiology that governs the immune system into defensiveness and the kind of disturbance, inflammation that it creates. These words are very familiar to people now in connection with COVID. That physiology just changes. Immune system physiology now becomes a different physiology if you ever can love. And this is indeed the case because now doctors are finding that people who have love in their life, even eating a meal together, that requires an existence of some kind of affection for your partner. Even this kind of thing changes the physiology of the immune system. And that is just so crucial for people to have, because then they really would not have to be so afraid of things such as COVID or things such as chronic diseases. So this change, and if you do it in the brain, then of course one does not have to worry about dementia anymore. Today, so many people, 300 million people suffer from Alzheimer worldwide. That's a huge number, and they don't have to. All we have to do is to change brain physiology, awaken curiosity, quantum brain, and then these diseases will never happen.
So literally, the dementia is because they're, I guess, let me understand this. They're kind of, I guess, stuck in the physical sense and not in the, is that what's causing dementia? Or there's like an imbalance between, or distortion between the two? Or I just want to make sure I understand.
There are two things here. One is that too much intellectual activities disconnect you from the higher consciousness, non-locality. It becomes a very rational mind is computer mind, Newtonian brain.
Okay.
And so in that state, and plus you compound that with the immune system not having love, producing inflammatory molecules. Those inflammatory molecules, then brain also is not doing anything to prevent that. So the combination is what produces this phenomenon that those amyloid beta protein, that particular protein makes a coat over the neurons and people start forgetting. And once you start forgetting, you cannot make creativity anymore because creativity requires making new memory. And so you see, and also using old memory, old knowledge to find the new knowledge. And therefore, once creativity closes down completely, you are helpless. And this is what the dangerous thing about dementia, because once dementia sets in, then we cannot even do quantum healing. No more any kind of healing is possible. So it is much better to be aware of this and start working on the quantum brain as early as I become aware. This is a duty that we have to our body and the brain, to the world, because you know how expensive it is to support a person. Of course, we cannot just murder him, but support a person of dementia, it's a huge burden on the society. No? So these things can easily be avoided by more education. So our advice is very clear.
Let me add something. So about, again, in other words, so the idea is that if we continue to live lives without meaning and purpose, you know, if we live these lives in all this information processing only, and you see what's happening nowadays, that we give to children the tablet and the phone because we don't have time to spend with them, and give them some examples of purposeful living. So it happens that this Alzheimer and dementia, it's coming earlier and earlier. You find it even people of 50 years of age, you know, and that's really not okay. So one thing is that. And then the other thing that indeed it's this new theory that we have is that Alzheimer is also an autoimmune disease. Yeah, there is already some research. And the point is, again, that in Alzheimer, the immune system malfunctions and starts attacking its own body cells. Yeah, that's the general idea. But you can still suspect that Alzheimer might happen to people even when the immune system is okay. So the alternative is that some cells may become unrecognizable to the immune system as belonging to the body, in which case it will attack. So what is it that makes brain cells unrecognizable to the immune system? Yeah. So quantum science, what it's saying is that the purpose of a neuron in the neocortex is to help consciousness process meaning in all people, yeah, and purpose for some people which are more awake. So people who usually process only information can never any meaning or purpose, you know, they are totally into information. They are the most in danger or effectively losing their identity card with their immune system. Okay, that's maybe more explanation.
I think that's fascinating. I've had friends that have passed on that had Alzheimer's, and the experience, the toughness of that. And I have another one that's going through the beginning stages of dementia, and it's not a pleasant thing to watch a friend go through that. So, or somebody you love. So I understand. Well, it's not a pleasant thing to watch anybody go through any type of disease and sickness. And then COVID is, of course, like you mentioned, Dr. Goswami. I've thought about this a lot. The fear and the anxiety around that. I don't want to say necessarily. Well, to me, it does. I ended up with COVID, and I spent 3 weeks in bed. And the first thing I started doing is I actually started saying thank you to COVID. Thank you for this experience of being a lay down and be quiet for for the amount of time I have to. And instead of immediately going into fear and anxiety, I started saying, thank you for this experience. Then it was interesting because I had all this anger come up from like childhood and different things. I'm like, where's this come from? I thought I dealt with this. Well, I just blessed it because I was like, why not go? Why I'm laying here anyways. You might as well go through something instead of being, scared as opposed to. So it was a different experience.
Definitely. You know what? This stress and anxiety and fear is killing much more than the COVID. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, everybody that's watching, The Quantum Brain. I have not finished the book, and I would imagine there's a lot more that I don't fully understand. It's right alignment with, because recently I pulled out my DVD player and brushed off the dust and watched What the Bleep Do We Know again, Dr. Goswami, and I started watching, and I was like, man, I didn't remember that. And I remember, books like this, I'll probably read 2 or 3 times, and I'll be like, you'll realize something new each time you read it, or each time you watch movies that they tell you that are life shifting. And so, definitely buy this book. I'm sure it'll be something that'll sit with you for a while, and you'll read more than once, because it'll be, these two have been studying this and doing this research for years. And so they really understand, they have a passion for it. And, we should all have a passion for healing ourselves. And so that's something that we can all get into, and taking leadership in our own lives, and, being connected with other people. I think you mentioned some very basic, simple things about having dinner together, loving each other, not handing phones to or computers to your children, and actually spending time with them. And, there's a lot of things where I think this last couple of years has done some major things. I think it'll benefit my own group of friends. We get together every Saturday night for game nights, as opposed to going out to bars or restaurants. We actually spend quality time together. And I think those are just basic things that we can do for connection, as opposed to, always being in our minds and do. I think your next book should be Doobie Doobie Doo. It should be the title and stuff. So any last minute wisdom before we transition, out of the show and our chapter this session? Anything that you guys would like to say? Yeah, both of you. Dr. Onisor,
so the journey, it's a journey, right? So we are on this journey together, whether consciously or not, we are still together, and we are here to actualize all that oneness, all that beauty of the connection, indeed, which makes us humans, right? And this journey towards us, so that's oneness, is a journey of increasing intelligence, which means also of increasing health and happiness. Right? So we go towards this expanded consciousness, and that's where we will find this infinite new potentialities, and then we become co-creators as well. So instead of going in this state of victimhood, which we might have the tendency in this period, let's just assume a life of responsibility and evoke especially love, I would say, to keep us and to develop this human level to the next stage of humanity.
Also, finally, let's tell our listener that we are very much interested in how you felt about our book. So if you like the book and want to write a review of it for Amazon, that would be great. And also you can directly contact us. The website is amitgoswami.org. If you write to info@amitgoswami.org, you can reach both of us, Valentina and me, and we would be really anxious to hear from you.
And are
Thank you
they,
so much.
can you buy the book? Thank you so much. Can they buy the book at amitgoswami.org and also on Amazon? Sure. Can they buy it at the website or?
I think only on Amazon for
Only
now.
on Amazon. Okay. Okay.
It's
All
fresh.
right.
It's warm. It's like taken from the oven.
Well, everybody, thank you for again watching the Storytelling Alchemist show. Lots of great guests coming up, and much love for everybody watching the show again. Bye-bye.